For this lesson, you need to open the sample file Health Club Bookings 2 from your sample files folder. A very useful design goal when developing computer software is to create a user interface that requires no user training. The interface should be so simple and the features so obvious that users can train themselves by experimentation and discovery. For this reason, a user needs to be provided with an informative error message whenever they do something that's not allowed. In this lesson, we'll add an error message to the age validation to advise users that ages of less than 17 or more than 100 are not permitted. So to add an error message to column C, I'll begin by selecting all of the cells in column C, because those are the cells that currently have a validation. Then it's the Data tab on the ribbon, and in the Data Tools group, Data Validation. And I want to click the Error Alert tab in the dialog. Here I'm able to define a title and error message, so I think invalid age would be a good title, and for the error message, age must be at least 17 and no more than 100. I'll now click the OK button and I'll test my error message by typing an age of 101 into cell C7. And when I do, I see my descriptive error message. This validation is called a mandatory validation because there's absolutely no possibility of the user entering an invalid value. The worksheet will simply not allow an invalid value to be entered. But sometimes this restriction is too strict. You may want to tell the user that an age of over 100 is unusual, but if the user is really sure that the client is over 100, they can still continue. So here's how we define an advisory validation. I'll close the message box, I'll select column C as I did before, and then click Data, Data Tools, Data Validation to bring up the Data Validation dialog. Notice that on the left-hand side of the dialog there's a style drop-down, and if I look at the three possibilities, they're Stop, Warning and Information. Windows users are conditioned to understand the meaning of three different icons. The red hot cross bun icon is the stop style, and it means something terrible's happened. You'll see this icon when Windows crashes or when there's some other critical error. The next is the warning icon. This means that something quite bad has happened, but it's not a critical problem. And the final icon is the information icon, which means we just thought you'd like to know. Each of these styles produces a slightly different error message dialog. The warning dialog, for example, shows 4 buttons labelled Yes, No, Cancel and Help, enabling you to ask the user a question such as, "Are you sure this is correct?" and then the user can click the Yes button in order to proceed with the invalid value. So I'm going to select the warning style, and for the title I'll stay with invalid age, but for the error message I'll go with age is usually between 17 and 100, and then are you sure this is correct? And that will put a different message in the box and allow the user to override the validation if they're really sure. Let's test that now by clicking OK. Then in cell C7 I'll type the invalid age of 101, and when I press the Enter key I see my new warning dialog with the 4 buttons. Age is usually between 17 and 100. Are you sure this is correct? Continue, and I'll say yes, continue, because I am sure it's correct. And the invalid age is then allowed, but I'll put that back now to the real age. Let's now use the same technique to add a mandatory error message to column E. So I'll select all of the values in column E. It's the Data tab on the ribbon, Data Tools, Data Validation, and for the title I'll have invalid value, and for the error message I'll have prices cannot be less than 10 or more than 100. And I click the OK button. Let's test that now with a price of 101. And the dialog is displayed with a much more friendly message. And notice that I can't override this dialog by saying, yes, 101's actually okay. I only have the choice of retrying or cancelling. Well, I'll cancel to leave the old value in the cell. All that remains now is to save your work, and I'm going to save with the new name Health Club Bookings 3. And as usual, I'll save to the folder above my sample files folder. I click the Save button, and you've now completed Lesson 2.8. Create user-friendly messages for validation errors.